Okay, and do you have some way of seeing if it's actually happening?
Sure, should be able to.
Okay, cool.
It says our webinar is now streaming live on Facebook, so I'm going to the lobby card.
Great. And you have some way of checking it?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
double check it here.
thank you.
I'm looking on my phone and I'm not, let's see. It's not showing today, this afternoon, or this morning's, or this one.
Interesting.
I mean, this morning you saw it on your laptop. What?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I'm a little afraid to go and look on mine because I feel like that might have been what maxed it
Okay.
earlier. Um,
Um,
is there another computer you can look on?
well, I've got Dan's, but he's on it right now.
Right. Let me just look on mine on my phone. That's really all I've got. It looks like I've got it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So good. Oh,
Okay.
so if you are tuning in to us, this is setting up for the Battle of Kursk tonight, right here on Facebook Live. So join us at 8:10. This is just a little setup procedure. You can also join us on Zoom. You can register for that at therhino.org, therhino.org, or check back with us. But we start at 8:10 tonight. Okay, Joe, so I'm going to turn off mic and video, and I'll see you at 7:10.
7:10. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Bye. Hey, Joe.
Hey there.
Hey. So we're going to go to recording mode.
Right.
If you're suddenly catching us on Facebook Live, the performance starts at 8:10 tonight. You can watch us here or on Zoom. Check in for Zoom at therhino.org, therhino.org, and it's free. Okay, great. So we're recording?
We are recording.
Terrific. And let me just check this while we're at it. Test, test.
You sound good.
Good. Test, test.
Sound good.
Good. Test, test.
Good.
Okay, good. Audible, fully audible?
Fully.
Fully. Okay, great. And the picture's good?
Picture's great.
Okay, terrific. Okay, great. Then I'll see you a little bit before 8.
Okay. I'll be here.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Hey, Joe.
Hey there.
Hey. So I just want to check my sound really quick.
Sound is good.
Let me just see. Okay, here we go. Okay, check, check, check.
Yes, good.
Okay, good. Back here. Check, check.
Yep, good.
Okay. And check, check.
Good.
Okay, good. Fully audible?
Fully audible.
Okay, good. And the shot looks good.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Thrilled that you're here, and we will begin in just a few minutes. Yay! Thanks, Joe. Hello, my name is John Fisher, and this is the Battle of Kursk. I met Dmitri in Volgograd, which we used to call Stalingrad. Stalingrad is a mythical city, shrouded in myth. It's a modern mythical metropolis. Yes, I met Ivan in Stalingrad. Yes, that's where we both lived, and that's where we fell in love. In Russia, it is a mythical city, Stalingrad, because of the Battle of Stalingrad. This is where the Russians stopped the Germans. They were stopped cold. Now, my research has been into the battle. I am a graduate student in history, a PhD candidate at the university, and many books have been written in the West about how 3,000 Russian soldiers were killed by the Soviets, by the Communist Party, to scare the remaining Russian soldiers into fighting against the Germans. But I researched this and I discovered that it is not true. Only 300 Russian soldiers at Stalingrad, at the Battle of Stalingrad, were executed for cowardice. The rest of them fought to free Russia, Mother Russia, from the Germans. The Germans had invaded in 1941. They killed civilians, children, men, raped women, deported millions to Germany and Poland to work as slave laborers, to die as slave laborers, starved to death millions of Russian prisoners of war. We hated the Germans, hated them. And that is why the people of Russia fought at Stalingrad, not out of fear, not because the Communist Party was killing people and that we were cowards, no, but because we wanted to set our mother Russia free. We fought for Russia. And that is when we stopped the Germans. We turned them around and we won a battle for all the world. I met Dmitri at the ballet. I had defended my dissertation at my oral defense. It was very successful, and the head of my committee, a professor at the university, wanted to celebrate, so he took me to the ballet. It was Spartacus, that wonderful communist era ballet from 1956, in which Spartacus, the slave in Rome, rises up against the Romans. And it had that wonderful, beautiful, sumptuous music by Kuturian. It was divine. And Spartacus had the big pas de deux with his wife Phrygia. And there was that music, da da da, da da da, and he lifted up Phrygia, da 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 da. And I looked down the aisle, and there was little Dmitri, hunched over with those big glasses of his, so enraptured. And I was in love. And I knew at that moment that I had to talk to him, that I had to approach him. So at intermission, I walked up to little Dmitri and I said to him, I said, hello, my name is Ivan. Da da da, da da da. Da, 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 da. Hey, it's me. It's John. Yeah. In 2016, Michael and I were headed off to Russia. We were so excited. We were going to Russia. You see, my whole life, I had been fascinated with Russia, with Moscow especially. I thought it was like this beautiful, mythical place. I wanted to see the capital, Moscow. And, I'd grown up in the Cold War, right? So I've been like always told that the Russians were evil and the enemy, but I didn't believe it. They had all this great stuff, all this great music, these great plays, these great novels. I knew they must be cool. And my brother had the same obsession. He's one of the 2 students at my high school who studied Russian. I bet everybody teased him about that. I mean, what were they training him for? Like to be a spy? It didn't make any sense. But I never thought I'd saw it because, of course, when I was growing up, it was the Cold War. And everybody said there was going to be a big nuke exchange, like a nuke war, right? And, Moscow would be flattened. On top of that, I'd be dead, And, I saw all those movies growing up, all those incredible Cold War movies like Fail Safe. That was so frightening. And the worst, the most horrifying was On the Beach, where you actually see San Francisco Francisco after the nukes. Like everybody's dead. They've all gone into their apartments, radiated and died. It was horrible. And those horrifying TV series like America with a K, with the Russians invading. And the day after with all those missiles shooting up, it was like depicted. We were obsessed with it. It was weird. So finally, in 2016, we were still here. We hadn't been nuked. Moscow was still there. So we were off. We were ready. We were going. I was so excited with Michael, my lovely husband. Now, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because we had to get like a visa. And this visa cost like hundreds of dollars, right? And it was like ridiculous. We had to like put our passports in the mail and mail them to the Russians. And it was like, what? I was like, they're not going to give us our passports back. They're going to take them and sell them. It's like, bye-bye passport. Bye-bye, bye-bye little blue passport, bye-bye. And we had this huge questionnaire, like this huge form to fill out. And Michael, it's like it didn't make any sense. The translation was so weird. So there's like all these YouTube videos and Michael like studied the YouTube videos and he figured out what everything was really asking us. If you get one wrong, it's like a test. You lose your money, you don't get to go. Now, there was one question that really worried me, and that was about professions, right? Now, Michael, it was easy enough because he worked for the public library, right? So, nobody cares about the public library. I mean, everybody loves the public library, even the commies, even Putin, everybody loves the public library, right? But what was I going to do? I mean, I'd heard all this stuff about how weird they could be about gay people. I mean, it was legal, but I heard that they could be really weird. So I was really scared to put down that I was like the artistic director of this queer theater. I thought they'd like look it up and they'd be like, no, we're going to keep your money and you don't get a visa. So I kind of lied. I had this micro job at teaching acting at University of California, Berkeley, right? I mean, it's like micro, it was like that much of my income. But I wrote for occupation, I wrote that I worked for the University of California, Berkeley, that I was a teacher, yeah. And we got the visas, we got them. And then I got nervous, of course, because I thought I'm gonna get there and they're gonna be like, oh, he lied. So they're gonna send me to like the Gulag archipelago, right? I'm gonna turn into Solzhenitsyn. I'm just gonna disappear into the Siberia. Michael might visit me once in a while and bring me some salamis or like a knish, but I was like horrified, but it wasn't. We were going. I was so excited. And of course, it was my summer vacation and we were going in July. Now, every guidebook you read says, oh, July in this country, July in that country, it's all beautiful. The weather's nice. Now, the ones for Russia did say, it can be, it can be a little cold and there can be some rain, but the weather's pretty much nice. I was so excited. We got to Moscow and it was freezing. It was raining and the rain was like horizontal. It wasn't even at an angle. It was like, coming, you couldn't even carry an umbrella. It would like find you. It was like chasing you, this rain. And I, of course, took no, right? The year before we'd gone to Greece. I took no, winter gear. It was horrible. So, we always had to get around. That was the main concern. We'd get wet as we're going to museums and stuff, and we really wanted to see the Kremlin. Well, everybody knows that Moscow has this amazing subway system. It's great. Unfortunately, it's just a bunch of circles, right? It doesn't, we wanted to go like to the center. It was just circles. So it was like a half-hour walk to a subway station, then another half-hour walk to the Kremlin. It was ridiculous. We couldn't get anywhere. So fortunately, I'd done my research, and they have this great cab system. They have cabs all over the place. So I went up to the concierge and I said, I want a cab for the Kremlin. Yeah, my husband, my partner, this guy I'm traveling with, we want to go and see the Kremlin. And she was like, it'll be $30 American. I was like, $30 American? It's like 5 minutes away. And she said, well, it's zones. So you're in a zone now, and then you'll cross into another zone. And that'll be, so it's like, it wasn't dollars, of course, it was like rubles. So it's going to be like 7,000 rubles and 1,400 rubles. I was like, what? So if you like even cross the line to go into another zone, it's like double. So this is what I figured out. There are two cab prices in Russia, one for the Russians and another for me. I was like, forget it. This is too expensive. Fortunately, I had my phone and I had my Uber app on it. I had done my research. And so I was going to get an Uber. They have Uber in Moscow. I knew that. And they do, it's true. For 12 million people, they have 2 Ubers. 2. So I was like, I saw this Uber. It was like 40 miles away and I booked it and it was coming towards me. I was like, 2 Ubers? I thought, okay. Well, as it got closer, it got more and more expensive. 7,000 rubles, right? 1,400 rubles, 14,000 rubles, 21,000 rubles. It was like going up in price. I'd never seen that. I said, forget that, I canceled it. So I was totally depressed. I was like, I couldn't get anywhere. It was cold, it was wet. So I went up to the room and I said to Michael, I said, forget it. Let's go. Let's go. There must be a flight that goes from Moscow to Greece, anywhere in Greece. Let's just get out. Michael had figured out the bus system. He'd figured out the bus system. What a hero. So now we had the bus, right? So, okay. So we went down, we got on the bus, and they can't mess with you on the bus. They don't know who's who, right? You know? So it's like we paid like nothing to ride the bus. And it was great because it was like being at Disneyland. We were like driving through the beautiful Moscow and we could see everything. And then we rounded a corner and there it was. Amazing. The Kremlin, the real Kremlin, this big red brick behemoth. It was huge. It spread forever. It was gorgeous. And when you read guidebooks, you know, they always say this is gorgeous, this is gorgeous. But what they really mean is this is gorgeous and it's huge. Like Versailles is beautiful and it's huge, right? The Louvre is spectacular and it's huge. That was the Kremlin. It was massive with all these beautiful towers. It was like the biggest medieval excitement I'd ever seen. It was incredible. And I was like looking, I was like, oh my God, this is where all these evil people hung out. The czars, Stalin, Brezhnev, Khrushchev, Putin. And it was so gorgeous. I loved it. We walked all around it and was surrounded by the most beautiful, beautifully maintained green grasses, these beautiful lawns. And we rounded a corner, and there off in the distance was the most beautiful church I'd ever seen. St. Basil's with those onion domes, although they don't look like onions. They look like those ice cream cones you get at Frosty Freeze. Yeah, except they're multicolored. They're much better than Frosty Freeze. They're just like these multicolored. It was incredible. There it was, St. Basil's. And that night we went to see Spartacus, the ballet by Katachurian. Oh, that wonderful music. Ba-da-ba, 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 ba-ba. And the great thing about this ballet is it was so gay. It was like, I couldn't even figure out if it was intentionally gay. It was just super gay. All the male dancers, their costumes were like this big. They were like these they were like strings. It was like, Spartacus, here's your costume, put this on. And it was like, I didn't even figure out how this guy got into it. It was just like this little tiny, you know, it was like this little piece of butt floss, you know, this tiny little sack. No. This wasn't like a thong or a jockstrap. This made a thong or jockstrap look like a tuxedo. It was like tiny. And then the women, of course, were all like dressed in burlap. I mean, this costume designer was like, right? They were just like buried in burlap. And the color palette for this, it was like done by a drag queen. Everything was like lame and pearls and beads. It was so gay, this production. It was like uber gay. But nobody in the audience seemed to notice. They were just like sitting there watching this totally gay thing happen for 3 hours. And they were so reverent about it because it's culture and the Russians love culture. It was incredible. But this is what was weird. When we got out of the theater, we went for this huge walk and we'd been there for 2 days and we hadn't seen any gay people. Nowhere in this massive city, right? I mean, we've been all over the place. And wherever you go, there's always a gay neighborhood. Like Paris has the Marais, and New York City has the West Village, and LA has, West Hollywood, and London, Soho. But there was no gay neighborhood here, none. Here, there was nothing. Nothing. There was no gay visibility, nowhere. In Stalingrad, there is no gay visibility, none. The Russians are very traditional people. They don't like demonstrative behavior amongst anybody, so it's fine. You just have to be discreet. Dmitry and I dated. He too was fascinated with Stalingrad, so we had much to talk about. The battle, we always talked about the battle. My grandfather fought in the Battle of Stalingrad. He was killed. He was killed fighting the Germans, fighting to free Russia. My grandmother, his wife, she lived in a cave. And she was pregnant when he was killed at the beginning of the battle. I'll let her tell it herself. Come, Grandma, come, Grandma, tell them. I survived the Battle of Stalingrad. I lived in a cave. My husband was killed. The cave was in the Mayan Kurgan. The Mayan Kurgan is the big hill in the middle of the city. And now it has a huge statue of Mother Russia with a gigantic sword, a celebration of the victory. I can tell the story. You don't have to tell the story. I can tell the story. I lived in the Mayan Kurgan. That is where the huge statue of Mother Russia is. The statue that celebrates the victory of Stalingrad. I survived the battle. When the Russians left, the Germans moved in. I was pregnant. The Germans are pigs. They destroyed everything. They killed everything that they didn't want. So I survived. I survived. It was horrible, terrifying. The Germans were pigs. They raped their way across the country. And when they were losing the battle and starving to death, they started to eat the dead bodies. And I became concerned because I'd given birth to Dmitri's father, just a little baby, and I thought they would eat the little baby, so I had to hide it and tell it to be quiet. Shh. Until the day they surrendered. The Germans formed these huge lines that snaked off into the distance, across the snow. And I sat there and I watched them and I thought, I hope you freeze. I hope you freeze. I hope they take you to Siberia and you all die. I hope you're worked to death. But the army came back. And it liberated Stalingrad. And the Germans, those pigs, they were defeated. Many people, like Dmitri's grandmother, are very conservative. The Volgograders can be very conservative. But Dmitri and I, we went to the ballet. We went to the theater. Dmitri loved the ballet. He loved the theater. I don't like the ballet. You like the ballet. I like the theater. Oh, Dmitri, you love the ballet. I don't like the ballet. I never liked the ballet. Oh, Dmitri, you love it. I don't like the ballet. Dmitri, my little Dmitri, isn't he adorable? We lived together, and that's when I discovered his cheeks, his beautiful little cheeks. I would pet his cheeks. My little Dmitri, my partner, one day, my husband. Yes. Oh. And then one day, I was headed home from school. I was headed home from the university and I was late and I saw my bus pulling away and I was running for it thinking, Ivan, you idiot, how can you be so late? And I was running for my bus and it pulled away, so I missed it. I would have to take the next bus, which was right there, but it did not go directly to my house. I would have to walk quite a ways, but it was fine. I just wanted to get home to Dmitri. And I got on the bus and I was walking towards the back of the bus when everywhere we went in Moscow, we were looking for gay people. We were there for a solid week. And in 1 week's time, this is the sum total of what we saw in the gay department. 2 very handsome gay men, middle-aged, sitting, watching Spartacus at the ballet. They were so discreet, but they were obviously a couple. And during the great pas de deux, they brushed each other's hands. On the Novi Arbaat, one of the great boulevards of Moscow, two lesbians walking down the street with their arms around each other in black leather, studs and chains and torn black jeans, and they kept kissing each other and grabbing each other, and they felt no shame. A big gay guy, a muscle queen with his big pecs and his pink and red tight muscle shirt, and across it said Castro. We saw this in the Arbot. It said Castro, and I was so happy. San Francisco, the Castro, a tribute to my own neighborhood on a gay guy in Moscow. And then a friend of mine pointed out when I got back that it might have been a reference to Fidel. And then this was completely amazing, a completely gorgeous transgender prostitute flagging cars in front of the White House at commute time. Beautiful she was, flagging cars in front of the White House. Now, their White House is their Congress. That's like their capital. That's like the center of everything. That's where the Congress meets, the Senate meets. It's incredible. You remember this building because when the communists tried to seize the government back from Gorbachev, right? During Glasnost, Perestroika, they tried to seize it back, and Boris Yeltsin showed up with the tanks and he fired them into the White House. That's their Senate building. That's their capital. And there was this gorgeous transgender working it in front of the White House. I couldn't believe it, but that was it. That's all we saw. In a city this size, we're used to seeing gay people everywhere. Where were they? We couldn't find them. That's all we saw the whole time we were there. The explosion was the bus in front of me. The bus that I was supposed to be on, killed by a terrorist, a suicide bomber. I was waiting for Ivan. I didn't know where he was. I'd heard that there was this big explosion, and I heard it was on a bus that he often rode, and I was horrified. And then he came home, and I grabbed my Ivan, and I buried my head in his chest, and I clung to him. I was so happy. The attack was from Muslim separatists from the Caucasus, from Chechnya. They had sent suicide bombers onto a bus. They blew it up. 8 people were killed. There were 2 more attacks later that year, one at the main train station. They were carrying these suicide bombers, explosives into the train station, but they were stopped at the security, and they detonated their bombs there. And then another trolley bus later in the year, 42 people of Volgograd were killed by the bombs. Chechens wanting their freedom from Russia. I hate them. Why? They just want their freedom. They hate us. They hate gay people. They hate us. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be free, Dmitry. How can you support them? Oh, when they almost blew you up. My Ivan, they almost blew you up. Come here. Calm down, Dmitry. Calm down. It's all right. It's fine. Then, on May 9th, we celebrated Victory Day. This is a very important holiday in Russia because Russians have a difficult time agreeing on what holidays to celebrate. You see, when communism fell, we lost all those holidays that celebrated the victory of the revolution in 1917, the birth of Lenin. All of them were obliterated. But Putin cannot get behind the religious holidays like Easter and Christmas because he doesn't want to show too much support for the Orthodox Church. So what is left? The only thing that everybody can agree on is May 9th. Victory Day, the day in 1945 when the Nazis surrendered and we had won the war with only a very little help from the Western Allies. We had defeated the Nazis. We had eliminated them. A big, important day in Stalingrad. And Dmitry wanted to go out. In Stalingrad, it's important to support Victory Day. It is an important day. It's dangerous out there, Dmitry. People are so upset about the terrorists. There's so much anger. It's dangerous this year. I want to go. I'm going out, Dmitry. I'm going. I want to go. All right, Dmitry. You should go. All right. Yes. Show my support for my grandfather and my grandma. All right, Dmitri. But be careful and don't drink too much vodka. Yeah? All right. Go on, Dmitri. At no point the whole time we were in Russia did Michael and I feel like we were in a backward country. We never felt that. And we knew that we wouldn't feel that way because we're in San Francisco and we're surrounded by Russian Americans, and they are so cultured. They love the ballet, the opera, they love the symphony, they love it all. And they've got everybody at Tchaikovsky, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, they've got the theater, Chekhov, Turgenev, they've got Stanislavski, they've got it. But it was so interesting to see it on the ground, to actually see it in Russia, to see them interact with culture. The ballet, both times we went, was packed. The theater, packed. The museums, packed. Now, I go to museums all over the United States, and the United States has wonderful museums. They really are incredible, but often there's nobody in them, right? And if there's a blockbuster show, they'll be full, but if there isn't, there's often nobody in them. Not so in Moscow. In Moscow, the museums were full. We went to the Pushkin Museum. That's their Museum of Western Art on a Friday night at 8 o'clock. It was singles night, singles meeting at a museum to hook up. It was weird. It was like it's being treated like a bar. It was great. And we went to the modern Tretyakov, which is their Russian museum. And there was this huge line stretched for blocks. Again, on a weekend night, on a Saturday night, lining up. And they were having an exhibition, a special exhibition of a Russian maritime painter. I never even heard of him, but there was this huge line to get in. And we walked up to the front. We said, hey, we're from the United States. Can we just cut in? And they were like, no, you can't cut in. Get to the end of the line like everybody else. And right next to this museum is the most amazing thing, is a statue graveyard. This is like an exhibition, an open air exhibition of all of these fallen leaders, right? These disgraced leaders like Stalin, they're statues of him outside. And people like to look at these things because they're funny. It's funny to think that these people were ever worshipped. They have that wonderful sense of humor, the Russians, this wonderful ironic sense of humor. Can you imagine if we had a statue exhibition of disgraced leaders, like a statue graveyard? That would never happen here. Everybody gets so upset, but they've got that wonderful irony about them. We went to the chocolate factory, which is this huge factory that's been converted into hundreds of artists' studios, and the garage, which is their contemporary art museum, which was full of American contemporary art. Can you imagine us having a museum full of Russian contemporary art in the middle of Washington? Impossible, but this was like a celebration. They were so open-minded about this stuff. So why with so much culture? Why with lines stretching around the block? We went to the Tretyakov Museum on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. There was a huge line. Why with the museum so crowded? The ballet, the theater, the opera, everything. Why this invisible gay thing? What's going on? When we went from Moscow to St. Petersburg on the train, I decided to investigate it. It was fascinating. In 1993, they decriminalized homosexuality. Now, that is 10 years before the United States finally decriminalized homosexuality in the Supreme Court with Lawrence v. Texas. 10 years. In 1999, all the Russian psychiatrists finally declared that homosexuality was no longer a pathology. Now, this is what's weird. I truly believe that the Russians like Putin. I think that they really like him. I think that they support him. And I know that there's election fraud and all sorts of tampering and all that. I know that, but I think by and large, they support him. Why? Because he's a strong man. He stands up to the world. He stands up to the United States, and they respect that. They've only been led by strongmen, by the czars, by Stalin, Brezhnev, Khrushchev, right? And now Putin. They like somebody strong. They like somebody powerful, and I think that they support him. I think by and large, they support him. Now, something very strange happened, though, in 2012, because he elected himself again for another term, and some young people in Moscow, a lot of them, as a matter of fact, got very frustrated. They were frustrated with this guy who kept electing himself president, so there were protests. Now, the protests were ruthlessly suppressed. But moving forward, what was Putin going to do? Well, he was very clever, because he wasn't going to keep suppressing protests. He had to nip it in the bud. He had to give the young people something to distract them. So he made Moscow a beautiful city. He started restoring it. They had this horrible traffic problem, famous traffic problem, articles in the New Yorker magazine just about Moscow's traffic. He widened all the roads. He put parks and gardens everywhere. He rehabilitated the old ones like Gorky Park. It now has these beautiful chaises everywhere. You can just lay out in the sun. He lined the banks of the river with public parks. He set up open air ping pong tables. The museum stayed open. Things were cheaper. He gave young people creature comforts. He made Moscow a beautiful city for them. And guess what? They stopped protesting. Very clever man, right? Yeah, whatever you think about him, he's smart. He figured that out. But what was he going to do for the people who didn't live in Moscow? Those people who might be getting frustrated with him. What was he going to give them? Well, this is where it's important, I think, to understand the Russian religion, the Orthodox religion. And it's a much deeper belief, I feel, than anything we have here in this country, because it goes back centuries. It's rooted in them. It's deep. It's part of their soul. It's part of their physiology. Now, a good example of this was we were in St. Petersburg and we went to Our Lady of Kazan Cathedral. And this cathedral is incredible. It's got these huge colonnades that come out from it. They're like arms that embrace you, these beautiful colonnades, and they lead to this beautiful domed church. It's like a mini St. Peter's, but much more graceful. It's so delicate. As a sideline, Truman Capote went to St. Petersburg in the 50s, and he said that he saw gay graffiti written on those columns, like, for a good time, call Alex, and then like a phone number. Yeah, well, we didn't see that. We looked for it, but it's not there anymore. It's been erased. Anyway, we went inside, and there was this beautiful statue, Our Lady of Kazan, and lined up in front of it were like 100 people waiting to kiss her foot. Now, we'd seen this before, like we saw it at St. Peter's in Rome, people lining up to kiss St. Peter's foot. It's famous. It's famous. His foot's worn away. They have to replace his toe every few years. But what we also saw was something we'd never seen before anywhere. And I read about it, but I'd never seen it. And it was shocking in the middle of St. Petersburg because all the people in this line were sick or living with a disability or somehow mutilated from an accident. They were all there looking for a miracle, and they expected Our Lady of Kazan to give it to them. They believed. That was the depth of their belief. So what was Putin going to give these people? How was he going to show them that he supported them? Well, he gave them something that they wanted. He turned on the gays because they do not approve of homosexuality. The people in the Orthodox religion, they do not approve of it. So he gave them something anti-gay. Now, he couldn't take away, gay was legal. He couldn't take that away. He couldn't change what the psychiatrist had determined that it wasn't a pathology, but he created a ban on gay propaganda, an anti-gay propaganda law. Now, it seems to make sense because it's like you're not supposed to propagate. You're not supposed to go out and like convert children to homosexuality. And I totally agree with that. I don't think I should be like converting children to homosexuality. That's terrible. But that's not the law in its entirety. Of course, it can be interpreted any way any law enforcement officer wants to. In other words, anything can be considered gay propaganda, a movie, a book, music, an advertisement for a bar, anything, and it is. In Russia, this is applied, however, to persecute gay people. In fact, the big gay bar in Moscow is called Propaganda, right? Again, that great Russian ironic humor, propaganda. But the guidebook said, don't go there because there are raids and you might be caught in a raid. What? As a matter of fact, they did recommend one gay bar that you could go to. It was on an obscure alley, dirty little alley in a weird neighborhood. And you went up there and the guidebook said this, ring the doorbell and they will slide open a slit and make sure you're gay before they let you in. What is this, the 20s? Prohibition? Is this the 50s? McCarthy? It was like weird. So this is what Putin gave them. He gave them an anti-propaganda law. Unfortunately, anti-gay legislation, it just encourages people. And it encourages the worst in them. Stalingrad! Woo! Stalingrad! Stalingrad! Woo! Victory Day! Stalingrad! 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 Victory Day! Stalingrad! Stalingrad! Oh, Boris! Boris, you remember me? It's Dmitry from high school, Boris. Dmitri, tiny Dmitri. Yes, it is. Hey, Boris, how are you? I'm good. You remember Mikhail from high school? Mikhail, look, it's a tiny Dmitri. How are you, tiny Dmitri? I'm good, Boris, I'm good. You're fat. I'm not fat. I'm tall. I'm not fat. How is your fiance Alexandra? Did you marry Alexandra? Alexandra was my sister. I didn't marry her. I'm gay, Boris. You know that. You're gay. Ah, don't kid. I am. I have a boyfriend. He's wonderful. His name is Ivan. Gay. Isn't that illegal? Well, it should be. Didn't you sleep over at my house a couple times in high school, Dmitri? Were you gay then? Come here. No, Boris. Boris, come here. Give me that bottle. We got to St. Petersburg. It was a gorgeous city. Palaces everywhere, astonishing museums, and all of them full. But this time not with Russians, but with tourists. Because St. Petersburg is considered a Western city. That's what Peter the Great wanted. He wanted to build a city that was part of Europe. And of course, it's on the Baltic, so all the cruise ships can get there. So it fills up with tourists. And once again, beautiful museums, but now crowded with tourists, packed. You could barely get through the doors. It was amazing. And the cliche is that it's the more European of Russia's two big cities. Moscow feels like a capital, like where the country is run. But St. Petersburg feels like Europe. And it is too a mythical city like Stalingrad, like Volgograd. During the war, when it was known as Leningrad, it held out against the German army for 900 days. The siege of Leningrad was mythic, and that's how they beat the Germans. Leningrad held out for 900 days. Moscow resisted the advance of the German panzers, and finally Stalingrad, Volgograd, resisted the entry of the German army into the south and pushed the Germans back, and that's how they won the war. But strangely, this mythic city, St. Petersburg, is also dangerous. Non-Caucasians are often the target of violence in the city. The guidebook says, don't go out at night if you're not a Caucasian. And here is where those notorious anti-gay propaganda laws were first perpetrated, right here in St. Petersburg. In 2013, the year I met Dmitri, the world blew up for me. That was the year of the anti-propaganda laws, the terrorist attacks in Stalingrad. And Dmitri, my little Dmitri, on Victory Day, killed. When they found his body, they couldn't identify it for 2 days. He'd been beaten so brutally. He was raped with 4 times, they said. The witnesses had heard all those ugly names shouted at him as he was beaten. It was a hate crime. But the police said that he owed his killers money. Dmitri never owed anybody any money. It was absurd. The trial was held in a closed room. Nobody could go. Those men were given 20 years, but the reason for the crime, they said, was a debt, that Dmitri owed them money and they beat him. I heard later that his father Dmitri's father had said he would not let his son be remembered as a gay man. His son was not gay. And that might have influenced the decision. I went to see his grandmother, the only member of his family who I'd ever met. My Dmitri, my only grandson, you killed him. You killed him. You with your gayness. You made him gay. He was not gay before he met you. You killed him. That's why he died. Because you brought sin into his life and he was murdered. You killed him. You did. You killed him. Dmitri, my only grandson. I saved him from the Germans, his father. And now he's dead. It was time for me to leave Russia. There was nothing more for me here. I had a PhD. I would go to America. I would teach at the community college, a high school, wherever I could get a job. I would go somewhere in America where it was safe, where I could live without fear. For me, the test of any country is whether or not they can have a gay pride parade. I mean, I think that that's a wonderful litmus test, right? Because if a country can have a gay pride parade, there must be something going on right there. So one trip we took was to Israel, and we arrived in Jerusalem on the day of their gay pride parade. It was amazing. And, you know, Israel's got a ton of problems. I mean, Netanyahu was like a weirdo. Obviously the problems, but they were having this massive pride parade in Jerusalem. And it was all to celebrate one person, a woman named Shira Banki, who was a young lesbian who'd been killed at the Pride 2 years before. And usually Pride is held in Tel Aviv, but they were having it in Jerusalem because that's where she was from. And so this was a wonderful celebration. We didn't even intend to be there that day, but it was just like a miracle. Well, Michael was really tired and he went up to our hotel room to get a nap. And I just wanted to walk around Jerusalem. I was so excited to be there. I went down to the King David Hotel, which is like the best hotel in that whole part of the world. Beautiful hotel, spectacular. And right next to it is this lovely park. And you're like in the middle of the desert, but it was like green with fountains, gorgeous. But it was full of cops and army people. On Gay Pride, they were all like huddled together and they had their drones. They all had their drones with the controls and everyone. It was like hornets. I felt like I was being attacked and I was like terrified. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Are they going to attack the marchers? What? No. They were there to protect the marchers. The army had turned out. The police had been sent. They were there to protect the marchers. So when it happened, a fanatic killing a young lesbian 2 years before could not happen this year. Michael joined me and we went to this huge park. It was full of people getting ready for the parade and we waited there with them, thousands of them. And finally the parade started through Jerusalem. And Michael and I, we like edged our way to the front and we got out in front and we were in the front of the parade. And it was magical. Like every queer person in Israel was there in the parade. There wasn't anybody left to watch. We were just marching through this city with almost nobody watching except the army and the police there to protect us. And the first thing we did was we walked up to these huge vats that had yellow carnations in them and we each took one out. We were given these. And then we walked up to this huge picture of Shira Banki. And we lay our yellow carnations in front of her picture, looked at her, and then moved on. It was magical. And then we were marching through Jerusalem, and there were no floats, there was no music, there was no corporate presence. It wasn't at all like a pride parade here. It was just people marching, sometimes shouting, sometimes singing, just this mass of people. I think it was 30,000 people moving through this city. And this Orthodox woman came out on her balcony, and she actually smirked at us and went, and everybody shouted back at her, "You loser." And it was fine, who cares? And her husband was standing behind her, and he was obviously embarrassed by her. He kept going like this. And she was like, "I'm so stupid." It was great. It was so wonderful. I was having the best time. And we were marching next to these guys who had these big, placards. And I didn't know what the placards said. I mean, we were kind of associated with them because we were marching with them. And so I asked this guy, I asked him, what's the placard said? And he said, "Oh, you're marching with us, basically, so you should know." I said, "Yeah, what does it say?" He says, "Well, it's anti-circumcision, so you're marching against circumcision." Oh, well, good to know what you're marching for. And we marched all the way through this city, this beautiful city of Jerusalem. And finally, at the very end, it opened up into this big park surrounded by big apartment buildings, and they were blaring music and there was dancing. It was a celebration for this wonderful march. And I was so impressed with Jerusalem, with Israel that day. This country you hear so many bad things about. It has so many challenges, but it could get it together to have a pride parade and protect the marchers. That was great. There hasn't been a pride march in Moscow or St. Petersburg since 2011. The only thing that's happened is that every year there are arrests. The police and the army arrest people trying to march through Moscow and St. Petersburg. There's no pride march in that country. When I teach the students history and we get to World War II, the favorite part for the boys in my high school class where I teach in Massachusetts, the favorite part for the boys in this private school is the Battle of Kursk. The girls roll their eyes. They're so bored, but the boys love it. All the tanks, because the Battle of Kursk was the biggest tank battle in history. Thousands of Russian tanks took on thousands of German tanks. And the strategy the boys love. You see, there was this huge salient in the middle of the German front line, a huge bulge full of Russians. And the Germans determined that they would attack from the north and attack from the south and cut off the bulge. And then they would attack all the Russians still in that pocket and destroy them. So the Germans launched their attacks at the beginning of July 1943. They were going to get their revenge for the loss at Stalingrad, at Kursk, at the Battle of Kursk. And the tanks came in and they battled each other, they battled each other, they battled each other. Thousands of tanks destroyed. The boys love that. They think it's wonderful. And the Germans tried to lop off the Russian assailant, but they failed. They failed absolutely, and the Russians beat them back, pushed them back. Russians of any type are resilient. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is John Fisher, and this has been the Battle of Kursk. FYI, the story of the young man being killed in Volgograd, Stalingrad, is true. This happened in 2013 at the time of the heating up of the anti-propaganda laws, the anti-gay laws in Russia, and he was killed. And he in Russia has become sort of a Matthew Shepard. The details of his life I made up. But the young man killed for being gay, beaten to death. It's a grisly story that you can read about in the newspapers online, is true. So thank you so much for joining me. You are a terrific audience. We have some other programs tomorrow night and Saturday and Sunday. We have Overlooked Latinas, which is a wonderful play by Tina D'Elia, performed by Tina D'Elia. And that is playing online, and you can buy tickets for it on our website, therhino.org, and you learn about all these wonderful Latina stars and how they've gotten some kind of shabby treatment in Hollywood, but it's actually a comedy and quite uplifting. I can't recommend it enough. And next week, I'll be back with another solo show. This one is called Gay Pilgrims for Thanksgiving. I will be performing on Wednesday so that we can all enjoy our turkey dinner. So check back with me for the Essential Service Project of next week, Gay Pilgrims, on Wednesday at 8, right here on Zoom and Facebook Live. We have more shows coming up. Alligator Mouth, this incredible play that takes place in a fortune shop with these two crazy gay guys, coming up in December. And then The Review, a wonderful play about an African-American contemporary artist, which is really fascinating, coming up in January. And the Essential Service Projects continue. And we have our free play reading series on the first Tuesday of every month. So check it all out on therhino.org, therhino.org. We're beginning with our big season plays like Over with Latinas to charge admission. But if you'd like to continue to support our free programming like the Essential Service Projects, you can do so by sending a check to me at my COVID-19 work address. That's John Fisher, Theater Rhinoceros, 91 Central, number 102, San Francisco, California, 94117, or by going online to therhino.org, clicking donation and making a donation through our website. But more than anything, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure performing for you. And I hope you have a wonderful week. And I'll see you hopefully next week, just before Thanksgiving. Good night.